luminarios who are here at the end of the first day we have at these great Latin American World Startup Cup. Thank you guys for joining us and for sticking in. We're going to have a good conversation today. I have a brief presentation, and then my co-presenter, Marcelo, and I will have some questions and answers, and we hope that you in the audience will also participate with us. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so this whole idea of trends in cybersecurity could be so broad. So I decided we're going to focus in on the cloud today. Everyone is very interested in the cloud. There's opportunity. There's many problems related to it, and we'll dive into some of those. And so specifically with cybersecurity, you hear about things with ransomware and data breaches, and what are the consequences for those leaders that may have their companies have major problems. We'll also go and look some more about some solutions. What are opportunities for our entrepreneurs and startup founders that may want to move forward in these areas? And again, like I said, we want to make sure we have some good conversation for our session today. Okay, before we go forward, let's go back in time a little bit. What are some things that we can learn from the data center and on-premise world? So, picture for you guys to look at this. Over the years, for technology in our data center, we've built up these layers of defenses, just like you see in any environment, with physical defenses and network defenses and multiple layers of teams. And then the cloud came, and we're like, hey, everything's open. We can go and get things done. Let's put a few gates up, though, as we pull back. You might look at something like your gate for identity and access management. Hey, yeah, you need a password to come in. But what happens if you go around the side of the new property you're building? Are there really defenses that you need to move forward? With that, let's kind of come back to what we're talking about. And I'm going to focus in on one of the problem areas for today, and then as part of our conversation, we'll expand on some more. Specifically, data breaches. Data breaches have become a much more costly, pervasive problem. And there's some stats here that you guys can review later. Some information about this. Most people who have reported on this have had multiple data breaches, and the cost of these are just becoming more and more as we move forward. All right, this is a bit of an eye chart, but have a look at this. This is a threat model for one AWS service, and I see one of the AWS experts I know in the audience here chuckling a little bit. This is a pretty simple model. How do you get your hands around this type of complexity, even if you're just going to operate it, let alone secure it? And as I mentioned, this is one model just for AWS or Amazon Web Services. If you add in GCP, Azure, and all of the other services that are here, it really becomes almost an intractable area of problems to look at. So another way to look at this is, what are the different services that we have in the cloud? And part of the great opportunities, we can do things we couldn't do. We could do them faster. But once again, as a defender, as someone trying to operate and secure these environments, how do you deal with this growth? If you look at this, there are thousands of services in the cloud, and they grow with different attributes month by month by month. These are managed by multiple teams that need to coordinate around it. And it becomes one of these areas where, okay, so what do we do? There's solutions we can use. You can scan your infrastructure as code. You can take care of vulnerabilities and posture management. You can build infrastructure as code. Probably some logos you guys see here that you would recognize. My company, Insecure, is in the area here as well. And so I would say these are all different areas you need to address when you're looking at how you secure your cloud environments and operate them. Again, don't want to dive into any particular solution. Happy to chat with folks here at the conference later on as well. But if you look at this, you have to address both the detection areas. You want to see what's going on, but when you detect, now you need to respond. Better to get to a point where you can prevent. And so that is on the left-hand side of our chart here, on the right-hand side of our chart here. You need to build those cloud perimeters for your operating environments. And then for the code that you're building, just as everyone has done kind of their delivering code into the cloud, infrastructure as code has become a main thing. And there's a couple vendors I've listed out here who are doing this well. All right, One thing I definitely want to call on, since we're here as a group, all the Luminarios at the Luminarium, find your peer group. One of the peer groups that I found specifically around data perimeter, or the cloud perimeter area that I focused on there before, is a group called Forward CloudSec. And there are many of these groups, both here in Colombia, South America, and around the world. Definitely, you have an opportunity to go and make a difference in these areas. Speaking of which, we're on to our conversation area.
First of all, thank you, John. I will say that when I'm with someone who knows a lot about some topic, I prefer to be silent. So I'm very grateful for your introduction and your knowledge. I mean, even when you talked so little about some things, I would like to go deeper, mainly regarding some topics that are more usual here in Latin America. Obviously, data breaches are typical here too, but the sizes of the databases are not as big as you have in US. But the last, I don't know, couple of years, there were a lot of ransomware attacks here in Latin America. Some of them very well known because they could not be hidden because of the kind of company. I mean, one big B2B ISP had a tremendous ransomware a couple of months ago, and one medical company had something similar about 6 months ago. Even the company that I used to work in had something similar a year ago. The first thing that happens is that why does it happen, first of all, and why companies initially try to hide it. You know, I mean, something like having a sin. I mean, you have a ransomware. What's worse than that? And that's also a problem of, it's not only security, but also the image of the company. What can you say about ransomware specifically?
Now, Marcelo, I think that's a great kind of entree into this, because it's not just about securing and operating that. You know, it is the reputation of your company. And for some companies, these ransomware events have become existential events. Yeah. You know, early on, people were saying, well, hey, you know, there was some security problem that happened, Target's still around. Over time, though, you look at how the attackers have gone into this, and first they'll try to extort you, right? So we'll put this out into the press. Then they'll lock your files. They'll try to do both multiple times. And so this is one of those cases where I think both in the cloud and in people's, you know, on-premise environments, it's been a real big issue around this. So, you know, I think so many vectors around it. We could do several different talks on this area. What I think is we definitely see that the exposure is there, and there are important business consequences. So for a while, people would say, no problem, I'll have cyber insurance. No problem, my customers will stay with me. Depending on what your business is, and especially if you have this happen multiple times, I mean, this will be an issue, definitely, I think.
Yeah. And also, and I don't know if you can tell us something else about that. I mean, you come from the Bay Area, you come from US. The cloud is a definition there, and a different definition perhaps in Latin America. I mean, we do not have all the same kind of money to invest in perimeter security or all the tools, and so what are the recommendations that you can give us or the audience in Latin America regarding the minimum steps to be followed, the minimum, the very minimum, and the additional steps that we can follow to be more secure?
Again, a great way to lead us down this path, Sam. I mean, I think a few thoughts. One is that, you know, definitely the whole idea about the cloud is it's not something that is in your local data center. And it's maybe something now you need some stuff that's going to be local because there's regulations around keeping data inside different countries and things like that. But you can use these services globally, whereas previously you would have to go and set up computers in every single country and things like that. So I think on the one hand, Latin America has the same issues that the rest of the world does using the cloud, the same opportunities as well. But there are definitely some areas where maybe the focus has not been as much, right? And so maybe a little controversial, but I will say, you know, do you feel that companies like some of the ones that you've managed have adopted these right? Do they see what's going on?
No, the point is that when you have an issue, you finally recognize that there are some problems in your infrastructure or even in the culture of the company. Many of the issues that you end up having with cybersecurity is that there are some blind spots here or there. Even social engineering that the attackers are trying to do to your own people, or even to yourself as an individual, right?
It's a great point, and many of our participants and audience members know across the world, October has become known as Cybersecurity Awareness Month, with a lot of focus on, are you training your staff right? Are people aware of things? Even your family, you hear about these scams where someone calls the grandmother and says, oh, your grandson's in trouble here, you must wire money directly. To certain degrees, these are the age-old scams we've seen forever, but facilitated now by kind of the cloud, the internet, other things like that. Back to kind of what the companies can do, it's a great point, which is that your people can be both one of the biggest sources of threats and one of the biggest sources of defense. So if everyone is on board, if they just take a minute and think, did the CEO really ask me to send a gift card? That's a trivial example to a certain degree. But if you think through these things a little bit, I think it's important to, when something like that happens, to stop, think about what's there, and don't click on that thing. One of the things that I've always done as a CISO practitioner, and we'd have these kind of sayings, you go and say, don't click on SHIT, right? Now, leading into some of our next panels and things like this, it's getting harder and harder. It used to be that you could tell a phishing email, because maybe there were misspellings. Maybe the attackers were coming from Korea, and English or Spanish wasn't their first language. Yeah. You could tell from maybe the domain was a little bit off. The attackers are using AI and the same tools that we're talking about trying to transform business and the world with to attack us, which is kind of another direction here, right?
And that's the problem. You mentioned AI, and that's, we talk about the past and we talk about the present, but what's your suggestion? What can happen with this new wave of generative AI and everything else, and in both sides, the defender and the attacker, right?
I think you're bringing up some important points and some areas that we have great sessions in this conference and other ones for people to check out more, as well as opportunity, for our entrepreneurs and other folks that are looking to make a difference in this area. It's important to look at how your company is using the public tools that are out there, the ChatGPTs and all the different services that are out there. You need to make sure that your data is not leaking out, right? Most people are trying to then take advantage of these to do business transformation. As I mentioned, there's some interesting sessions here where people will go into that in some detail. But it's important to go and really think about, okay, so how are we using these models? How are we making sure that we have a quality check that the AI is actually helping us? We've heard of this whole thing, right, with some of the large language models and generative AI where they have hallucinations, which is kind of a term that blows my mind a little bit, right? But, so for both if you're looking at this, to take advantage of it from a business perspective, or if you're in charge of securing and defending your environment, you need to look at how the attackers are using these, like we said with the phishing emails and other things like that, as well as how do you help your business partners to best take advantage of and secure your data using these new technologies. To a certain degree, it's no different than that shift to cloud. There are going to be different attributes and different areas you need to focus on, but some of them, like we mentioned with the scammers and the phishers, it's the same age-old thing. It's like someone who catches you on the street and says, I need the money for the bus, right, or something like this, but in a much more nefarious way, in a way that can be automated from so far away.
Last time we had an issue in a company I used to work. It was even a little worse because we didn't have a security problem in our own infrastructure, even in the cloud. But as we used to publish content in third-party platforms,
sure,
one of those third-party platforms had a security problem. It was also a well-known security issue that they did not correct. And because of some social engineering that the attackers were making all over the world, some of our employees opened up some part of the, I don't know, it was not clear if it was a cookie in the browser or something like that. And then, because of that, they compromised our channels and our content in the third-party platforms. And so you have a different kind of reputational problem because your content and your brand is being compromised on a third-party platform, even when you are not in charge of the security of that technology. So the problem is bigger when you are working on different kind of platform technology and digital platforms around the world, right?
And the trend, the tendency is definitely for, even if you're building your own things in the cloud, you're using many, many other things. You're using the ERP, the content management, the Salesforce management, all of these different things. And those providers are juicy juicy targets for the attackers. They look at those and say, I don't need to just compromise Marcello's company. I can get all of the 10,000 ones that are using this platform. And so it's important to talk to those vendors and make sure that they have the right practices as well, because you may be doing everything right, but still could be some issue with this. It does take me back to several instances I've seen where companies that provide some of the fundamental services for like single sign-on and password wallets and things like this have had issues and compromises. And all that we generally ask is that they find, fix, and disclose these as quickly as they can. No one can be perfect, but it does get back to the whole issue where, man, you got to make sure that when you're doing this stuff, you're doing it right. It's definitely been the case where I've seen companies, whether they're security companies or other parts of handling business, you get one breach, you handle it well. Your customers tend to understand. You get breached a second time, a third time. Man, there's alternatives out there, and that could be the end of the company.
Yes, and talking about future, everything related to cracking down passwords and security in general is based on algorithms. It's based on crypto. It's based on.
And when we say crypto here, we don't mean cryptocurrency.
No, not
we mean the
cryptography
and the things that protect our,
exactly.
all our technology. Yes.
And so, on one side we have artificial intelligence. On the other side we have progress in computing power, cloud, GPUs, plus the future of quantum computing. So what's going to happen with cybersecurity in that potential future?
So I think let's address some more of the AI first. And it's definitely an area where the efficiencies will continue, right? And so, again, the attackers will make use of these in combination. Greater compute power, greater automation, to even just take a traditional approach and do it faster. Now, the thing that gets really interesting, and I think for all of those who are here, stick around for the next session, because this one's going to blow your guys' mind a little bit. So we have traditional computing. We have all of this cryptography that protects our infrastructure. Now we have this new thing coming along, which not so new, but really starting to blossom, quantum computing. Could quantum computing be used to break through these algorithms like you're speaking about, which are based on hard math problems that traditional computers cannot solve quickly? Even if you add a huge farm of the GPUs, it will take many years, as long as we keep making the key lengths greater and other things like that. Quantum computing can effectively render some of these algorithms that we depend on obsolete. And so I think we should leave that one as a little bit of a teaser for our next panel group. But it is definitely something to keep an eye on. Some people see of this as, oh, this seems like such far future, right? Science fiction. But to a certain degree, that future may be coming sooner than we think.
And the CISO community is thinking about that and planning something?
The CISO community is definitely thinking about it and planning it. From what I've seen with the private kind of conversations we've had, has been much more aligned to this new wave of generative AI, machine learning, large language models, seeing how you can protect and defend. These are almost just slight extensions. I think to a certain degree, people are maybe a little wary of even kind of going down that path. Different standard bodies, though, are kind of coming upon, are there new algorithms that will be quantum safe, or they're quantum resistant? And again, not for our talk today, but it's an area definitely that people should keep an eye on, I think.
Great. Thank you, John. I don't know if someone is having some question for John mainly, or myself. Yeah.
Cici. Oh.
So I don't know if
we
there
have
is
a microphone for the audience.
Yeah. Just to have it on.
And thank you for all the native Spanish speakers who have put up with my English and in person, not so great Spanish. Marcelo has offered to translate either way, so please feel free to ask questions in English, Spanish, or
whatever.
Maybe even another language Marcelo knows.
Yes, obviously in Italian.
English, okay? Okay. So, I think I understand that one of the main problems that people are going to have is ransomware. So my question is, what's a easy-to-use open-source tool that a small company like mine, like we're only 10 people really, we're not that many. What can we use to have installed somewhere to maybe detect specifically ransomware? Maybe if it's not the best tool, it's fine. But what's a thing I can recommend, like small companies who are broke, like my own company? Anyway, so what's a good recommendation for a simple tool, only for, or like, I don't know.
Let me see if I can reinterpret this a little bit. And it's back to part of the quick presentation I did at the beginning. So part of what you're asking is, what can we do to detect? Ransomware is really one of those cases where we need to prepare and prevent. And so one of the most important things that you can do to avoid being in a ransomware situation is make sure you have some basic good data hygiene. Get the backups done. Even a small company now can do that, even to an external drive and take it home. Don't leave it in the office so someone steals your computer and the backup drive. But with the cloud and other things like this, you can do this in a way that is not as expensive. You don't need to have a big tape library like they used to have next to the mainframe that cost millions and millions of dollars. You can do these things, on a much easier basis. And you don't even need the specialized security tools as much. I definitely say you want to make sure you have those layered defenses, including making sure your people are aware of suspicious emails and things like this. But backups is such a fundamental part. And, it's not sexy. It's not like sexy cybersecurity. It's just fundamental good hygiene.
Okay, so I accept the suggestion to do backup. But the way I kind of feel you're answering my question is like, I'm telling you, I have this problem, and you're telling me, the way to solve that problem is that you shouldn't even have to have that problem in the first place, which is true, it doesn't truly, I mean, respectfully, I don't feel my question is answered as to what's an open source tool to detect an in progress as it's happening ransomware attack. But I will follow your suggestion religiously anyway.
I mean, some patterns or something that you can daily run and detect some different patterns here or there that suggest that there may be something.
Something that kills a process?
Sure.
That's is that a thing, or?
There are different components, obviously, in different parts of your infrastructure. And, again, without recommending any particular commercial solution, one of the security founders that I have a lot of respect for is Marcin and his company Malwarebytes, right? And so they always will provide a free version, and that's something I really respect. Because you see lots of commercial software, you have to, maybe you can get a 30-day trial.
Right.
But putting some defenses in place is important. Most of the solutions that look for antivirus, anti-malware also have some components around ransomware. So definitely that's an area I would look into. Open source, I'm not sure there's a specific one. Perhaps there's one that you know, but there's a number of solutions there. They only provide partial, I think, today still.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
We're open to questions.
Hi. Has someone who runs its business completely online, I feel kind of dumb that I've never thought about this. And the backup piece of advice is really good. Thank you. I'm gonna do that religiously, as Felipe is. I was just wondering, just as Felipe, my company is really small. We have like 10 people on board.
Sure.
So I guess that we're not like a main target, but still, how often do you see that happening? Quite often?
Yeah, so the question is kind of frequency of attackers. And
Exactly.
so you may be a small company that is in an important area. You may be targeted for that. What's interesting is because of this same automation, and even we've talked a bit about AI and other tooling, the attackers can do this at a great scale, right? And so it's become what's known as kind of internet background radiation of just the attacks that are going on all the time. And part of the research that I've done is you've gone and seen if, for instance, your username and password gets out there somehow, and the attackers pick it up, they are attacking within minutes. And so, it's important to do, again, some of this basic hygiene. I know it's not as kind of, maybe sexy from a cybersecurity perspective, but, don't reuse passwords. Use a password manager. And there's some great open source and commercial versions for that. Do the backups. And if you're dependent on maybe someone who handles your IT for you, ask them what they're doing. You're paying them for this service. They should make sure to have that. And I feel like things like this, as well as the two-factor authentication, is getting easier. This should be built in and not an extra charge to you as a business owner, right? This should be part of the core service that you get to protect your business.
If I can add something else, even when your company is not the final target of the attack, you can be an intermediate target because they are going to use your failures, whatever you have, open ports or whatever, to set the base for a massive attack someplace else. And you are going to be part of the other attack. And so then when something happens in a bigger company, you will be part of the problem because you were used by the original attacker as an intermediate point, just to make it bigger.
Yeah, that's another interesting attack vector. People speak of denial of service attacks, right? And so that's a targeted thing where someone's going to say, I'm taking down your business. And some of this was for kind of hacktivists or other activities, or again, back to the kind of ransom ideas. You pay us and we'll stop attacking you. Those same people now take advantage of vulnerable, thousands or even hundreds of thousands of computers to attack someone else. And if you're a business, the last thing you want is, some big company saying, hey, why are you attacking me, right? So again, it's one of those second order effects. Yes.
Thank you.
So Carolina's having a question there. Yeah.
Oh.
No, there. You're back. Yeah, sure.
Hi. What do you think about this device, for example, Flipper Zero, on the electronic basic and the break any system easy? Is the device the easy access for the people?
What is your opinion about tools like Flipper Zero? Do you know?
So the Flipper Zero is a very kind of hot little device. In fact, I just got one. A friend of mine gave me one of these. These tools have been around for a long time, right? And so fundamentally, as long as you put the right defenses in place, this is not going to make a huge difference, I think, but this may be a good conversation for us to have at the reception afterwards. So, Carolina, did you have another question?
No.
Okay.
So we're giving more time for Tyler and Bill to talk about quantum
There we go.
computing. You're very welcome here. I'm very excited to listen to you.
See, now if they have the quantum version of the Flipper Zero, now I'm gonna be
That's a
listening to
problem.
you.
That will be an issue.
Thank you guys so much
Thank you. Thank
for
you.
having us. And
You're welcome.
Thank you, John.
Marcelo.
You're a great guy.
Thank you.
Man in the mirror, you can be a hero, no matter what people say.